This is episode 1 of Food for Consciousness with Holly Page. I'm Caroline Stevens. Welcome, Holly. How are you?
Really good, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. Right, you've got lots to talk to us about. We've got half an hour to talk about it. You're going to share with our audience, who may or may not know anything about the topics you've been covering. Over to you. What are you going to start with?
Well, I want to talk about the basic principles behind what I write about and what I talk about, because it's coming at nutrition and well-being from really quite a different angle to nearly anybody else as far as I know. So because I'm taking a much bigger view, going way back in time into prehistory and potentially way into the future, and seeing that the way that we eat and our sense of well-being in that context. So the way we live now is very different, obviously, to any way we lived in the past, and very likely it's very different to any way we live in the future. And
so what time span are we actually looking at?
Probably going back, looking as far as 200,000 years back.
Right.
And, you know, potentially we don't know how far into the future, because that's the future. But that's the kind of, so often people think about the olden days, and, you know, people have romantic ideas about agricultural times, you know, people living in the countryside, and or they maybe look back further than that, hunter-gatherer times, you know, sort of going 12,000 or more years back. But I'm putting it in a much bigger context than that. What's going on now is actually a very small piece of, it's a very small piece of time, and things are a very particular way right now that they've never been before, and hopefully won't be in the future. Well, it can't be in the future when you see it in the context of the story, of what I believe is happening for humanity. Now, I want to say at the outset, although, you know, I've studied with a lot of people and learnt from a lot of people, there is one person I always give credit to, and it's very important because a lot of the background research, which I have no reason to doubt, is outlined in a book called Return to the Brain of Eden by Tony Wright. And when I found that information, that's when things started to really make sense. That's when I started to get answers to the questions that I had in my mind.
Is that when you started writing this book?
It was a bit after that,
yeah.
I mean, I was writing before that and been writing after that. But, you know, that was answered a lot of questions. So the basic principle I want to talk about, which we mentioned earlier, is the way we're constructed and the way we experience life is partially based on our DNA, but the way we're constructed physically, the way our bodies are constructed, the way our neural systems are constructed, is also dependent on the way the DNA is actually read or transcribed. And that's dependent on the chemistry in the body when that's happening.
And we talked about the DNA, how you are when you're a baby, and through. So would you like to talk us through this?
Well, you can see it's a good illustration of this principle, because when you're a baby, when you're a child, when you're an adolescent, when you're an adult, when you're an old person, you've still got the same DNA, but you're actually constructed quite a lot differently, and you experience life quite a lot differently. So we can see you can have the same DNA, the same person, but you can be constructed differently, look differently, and function differently, and experience life very differently. And we know that from experience. So extrapolating that, it seems likely that in the past the DNA was read really quite differently to how it is for anybody now, and potentially in the future it could be again. And we are very likely in an anomalous situation, and we behave and experience life in a very particular way that's actually very odd. And that's the point. That's why, you know, it can explain a lot of the odd things that happen. And so
diet, you were going to talk about diet.
Yeah.
And you were talking about seeds. We were talking about seeds earlier, and talking about coconut oil.
Yeah. So going back to basic principles again, when we were in our natural habitat, because that's all there was, you know, the whole of the earth was covered in forest, and we didn't have, you know, farming, and we didn't have any processed foods. We ate a certain way, and it's highly likely we lived in warm forests because they are our natural environment. You know, if we live in cold forests, we need clothing and houses and so forth. So in the warm tropical forest environment, there's a consistent supply of high quality fruit all year with the seeds in and lots of other vegetation, and a lot of primates that are, you could say, closely related to us still live in that way now. And you look at what there's some very interesting research by a primatologist called Catherine Milton, and she looked at what a primate in the wild eats and reckoned that we have about 2% of the micronutrients that they currently have, and yet our neural system's the most complex biological system known on the planet.
So in your book you were saying that we should be eating mainly raw food.
Well, I mean, I don't ever put things in terms of should, because it's, I mean, again, that's the concept. You see, that comes on to, this comes to, we're talking about what's happened to humanity and the effects. When we lost our natural diet, that changed our chemistry, because for whatever reason we left the forests, or the forests diminished, whatever happened, something happened to humanity, and that's alluded to in mythology. We know something odd has happened, but when we, for whatever reason, lost our natural diet, the chemistry of the body changed, so the way our DNA is read changed. And so we're now constructed quite differently, so we don't have a powerful digestive system, we don't have such a powerful immune system. And there's various other changes, and one particular one is what's happened to our neural system. So we have the split brain now. We have a left hemisphere and a right hemisphere that seem to operate quite differently to each other.
Can you remind me which side, what does the left side?
Well, I mean, the people's perception of the left and right hemisphere is mainly based on the work of Roger Sperry in the 60s. But actually, research in neuroscience has progressed a lot since then. But the perception is so that the left hemisphere is about logic and language, and the right hemisphere is more creative, spatial, that kind of thing. Yeah. But actually, it seems there's a bit more to it. So there's been research done in the decades since then. Particularly, one example is Alan Snyder working in Australia doing research on calming the left hemisphere.
Being the logical side.
Yeah, and miraculous abilities becoming available to people, that without doing anything to enhance their brain power, just by calming the left hemisphere. It seems like there's locked up potential in the right hemisphere that's kept we're not able to use it because we're so restricted by this left hemisphere that's become dominated by linear thought.
Is that the way our environment has shaped us to a certain extent?
The chemical environment in the body, but of course it's reinforced. It reinforced in the education system, and the whole culture reinforces that, because it's very much about language and logic, concepts. So that's why I say, coming back to the should, that's another concept. What does should mean? I don't know what actually, should doesn't really mean very much to us. It's a concept that doesn't have a great deal of meaning, but you could say, so I would think more in terms of purpose. So
why do we cook food?
So why would the purpose of eating raw food would be it can potentially make you feel a lot better and be a lot healthier. But there's no should. You can do what you like. You can eat what you like.
But then there are some foodstuffs that are preferable to be cooked.
Yes. So when we lost access to our ideal foods, so we were making, and we've moved all around the world, and we're in climates and terrain that isn't really suitable for us. Otherwise, we wouldn't have to wear clothes and have shelters and have farming and all that. So it's not, the other animals are just doing their thing, and we've got this really burdensome way of living. And we're sort of these fallback foods. So we learnt that by cooking or fermenting certain vegetables, for example, would break down substances in them that would otherwise be toxic. And a good example is spinach. It's one of a family of so-called cruciferous vegetables that have got chemicals called goitrogens in them, which can, if you have a lot of them raw, can inhibit the function of thyroid. So, if you're eating most of your food raw, you wouldn't eat a lot of spinach, because that wouldn't be a really good thing to do, because it could eventually it could diminish the function of your thyroid. But there's so many other things to eat, you see, and we're not in the situation that people were 50 years ago and before that. We can move our, whatever we think about air miles and moving food around, the fact is we can obtain foods that are more suitable for us now.
Yes, we touched upon, was it coconut oil?
Yes.
which obviously historically we wouldn't have had access to.
No, I mean coconuts I think have probably been moved around for quite a long while, but yeah, it was we can just now at a very reasonable price, buy a jar of organic cold pressed, coconut oil. So that's one example. So so people have different, I like to look at the purpose of things, what we're trying to achieve. And that was what originally brought me to finding out about the food. I wasn't even thinking about food. I was thinking, what am I trying to achieve? What do I actually want? And then, they always want to be happy. I would probably go a bit deep in that now. I don't think, obviously we're not going to be happy all the time, but, we experience a range of emotions. But it's what is a really nice thing for people to have is that this sort of feeling of connection to something bigger than us, whatever you call that, in the neuroscience experiments, they call it a sense presence. Some people call it the feel, some people would call it, using religious names, or you could call it the life force, whatever you call it. And that sense of connection, while you experience all these human things going on, I think that's probably the thing, in truth, people want most of all.
And we were talking about eating animal foodstuffs.
Yeah.
And butter as opposed to margarine.
Yeah, well, then we sort of go back to, our original environment. We'd get sunshine all year round, if we were living in a warm forest environment. And, we wouldn't be eating a sterile plant food diet. There'd be bits of egg and bits of insect material. And so it's not, plant-based diets have become very popular, but we wouldn't have been eating a supermarket plant-based diet rich in soil and insects and probably, egg material, that kind of stuff. And you get a different nutrition, lots of B vitamins there, and you get fat-soluble vitamins and so forth. So in the situation, say in England, we find ourselves, so we can only really get vitamin D from the sun for 6 months a year because the other months the sun simply doesn't rise high enough to shine UVB light on our skins. So we've traditionally got it from, so like dairy foods and meat. We've got our fat-soluble vitamin C, A, and the D and the K from those sources. That's how that was our survival. So we can still do that. But we can find other ways to do that if we want now.
We were talking about seeds.
Oh, seeds. Yeah. Well, see, the main natural human food is fruit, and obviously it has seeds in it.
Yeah.
And in our pristine state, we could digest all those seeds very easily. Our digestive system would break them down. And they're still an important part of our diet for the amino acids in them and the fatty acids in them. Because we need a good range of fatty acids. Do you know what our neural system is mainly made of after water? It's funny, most people don't know this.
We're made 80% of water, yeah?
But our brains, after water, what is the main type of thing? What is the main kind of substance they're made of?
I don't know.
Fat.
Right.
And obviously the natural fats for us to eat are unprocessed, uncooked fats. So to build our brains to the optimal, we still need to have undamaged fats, which means undamaged actually means unheated above biological temperature, above body temperature basically. Because after that, the molecules, that's the life-promoting temperatures. Because after that, you actually start to change the chemical structure of the foods, and that affects fats in particular. So, like these seeds, they've got omega-3s in them and omega-6s in.
So what seeds have you got
These
in there?
are sunflower seeds and pumpkin seeds and sesame seeds.
Right.
But if you, they've got a lot of omega-6 fats in them, and they've got amino acids in. But if you heat that, you cook that, you'll change the structure, and you change it to dangerous fats actually that the body doesn't really know what to do with.
Right. Okay.
So the only fats that are really safe to heat and cook with are the saturated fats. Going back to things like butter and lard, and now coconut oil. And all the other fats become foreign substances to us when they're heated above biological temperature.
What are you going to show us today on the fruits front?
Oh, what I was going to make?
Yes.
Oh, this is a staple recipe, and so I'm going to make a hemp milk first.
Hemp
So this
milk.
So this recipe, it covers a lot of nutritional bases. So it's covering a lot of the amino acids and the fatty acids and the fruit compounds that we need.
What is so wonderful for our bodies with in relation to the amino acids? What do they
Okay, so
give us? Isn't it pregnant ladies that?
it's a funny thing. Yeah, another thing that people generally won't know is that our neurotransmitters are made from amino acids.
Right.
Isn't that funny? We don't know that.
No.
So in order to build the structure of the brain, we need the right kind of fats. And in order to make our neurotransmitters, ideally, we need a good range of undamaged amino acids. In fact, there are 8 to 9 essential amino acids.
We need them all the way through our lives.
Yeah. We can't make them in our bodies.
But we need them extra amino acids when we're pregnant.
Yeah, well, we need an extra of a lot of things when pregnant, like fat-soluble vitamins and minerals. And there's quite a lot of things, aren't there? Like folic acid, iodine. It becomes especially crucial. In terms of volume, particularly fat-soluble vitamins that we need. I mean, traditional societies always gave the pregnant women and the young children extra portions of the foods that were rich in fat-soluble vitamins.
Fat-soluble vitamins,
yeah.
That's right. So you've got hemp. What seeds were those again? Hemp.
These are hemp seeds that these have been soaked for a few hours.
Where would you buy hemp seeds from?
Or any kind of health store, or online, or in the high street. Yeah. Obviously, best to get organic. Now, all seeds should ideally be soaked for a few hours overnight. And this is because seeds have growth inhibitors in them, which exist to stop them sprouting before there's an adequate water supply. It's to protect the seeds. But if we eat them unsoaked, then we're taking these growth inhibitors, and those can inhibit the assimilation of minerals.
Right.
So they can actually be an anti-nutrient. And that's another thing. Traditional societies always soaked their seeds and grains. In fact, they fermented their grains to remove
we used to
these.
soak peas when we were younger.
Yeah.
You remember the dried split? Was it the dried peas you used to get in boxes?
Yeah.
I haven't seen those for years. But you used to have to soak them, didn't you?
Yeah, but this is actually, even with seeds, even though they're not that hard, they're being soaked for a different reason. They're being soaked to take the growth inhibitors out of them. So I'm sorry I do this I'm a bit sort of hands-on, but you could use this. It's so easy to do it with your hands.
And so what's going to?
So I'm adding the orange juice because
this?
I mean, obviously there's vitamin C in orange juice, but it makes the hemp milk taste especially nice.
Okay.
So it adds some taste mainly. And of course, if you're adding citrus juice, that's alkalizing. So not most, apart from greens and citrus fruits, most of us eat is acidic or near the neutral mark. So we don't want to be eating mainly, it's not acidic, it's acid forming.
Yeah.
Right? So in order to get our bodies back to the pH they should be.
And what pH should they be?
God, I remember off the top of my head.
Should they be at neutral?
No, the body's supposed to be alkaline. So the thing is, if you eat a lot of acid-forming foods, then minerals will be taken from the body to buffer the foods we're eating. So it's a good idea to take in some alkalizing foods like citrus fruit and greens.
I remember reading about grapefruits, that you should eat grapefruit before meals because it breaks down the carbohydrates. Is that true?
Oh, maybe. I don't know about that detail, actually. There's lots of things I don't know.
Food is a big subject.
It is, yeah. I mean, it might well be true. I mean, with nutrition, I tend to focus. It's very much on. I'm not a qualified nutritionist. This has been nutrition with a purpose to find out how we can get into a state where we feel that sense of connection, to the wider forces of nature or whatever. So, I've picked up a lot of detail along the way, but I'm by no means a qualified nutritionist, and I can't answer everybody's questions. Yeah, as you can see, this is super easy. I'm just doing it sitting on an armchair. Oh God, I can't believe I did that. Thank you. So then we strain this. We strain through this. This is called a nut milk bag. and it's just to get the bits out, the bits of husk.
Sedimentary.
Yeah.
So the husks.
Yeah.
When you tried diets using hemp, how long did it take you to feel more connected?
Oh, I don't particularly, it's not particularly about the hemp for me. That's just one food.
Yeah.
For me, it was all about eating the raw food. And when I moved to a predominantly raw diet, my experience of life felt very, very different. And it was very fast, actually. But when I first started doing this, I went very quickly to eating all my food raw. I don't now, but eat predominantly raw food.
Okay.
But to me, it was about the combination of raw plant food, which is basically fruits, seeds, and a few nuts, not many, greens, salad vegetables, and a few extra pieces. For me, that's mainly raw dairy. And we need to have, there's various bits and pieces we need to fill in the gaps, okay? So I won't go into that now.
So are you a vegetarian?
Not strictly, no, but mainly, yeah.
Yeah. But you eat raw fish?
I don't anymore, actually, no. And the reason is, to be honest, I think it's mostly so toxic and it's got so much poisonous. It's when I started getting involved in mineral testing and seeing the levels of mercury that people had from eating fish. And it's just an unfortunate situation now. I do have purified fish oil in capsules, but purified to get those heavy metals out.
What about farmed fish?
No. But even fish caught at sea, it's still, you see,
Well,
that's
they live in carrier bag
unfortunate.
soup, don't they? As well.
It's just the unfortunate thing that it's so toxic now. It's just the situation we're in. So
Yeah.
I personally hardly ever have fish. I'm not going to say never, but I hardly ever do, and I can't remember the last time I did, because when I realised how toxic it's become. But I'm not here to tell people off.
No.
And I'm not, because there's lots of reasons to make decisions about what we eat. But I'm just saying in terms of saying how things are really.
What sort of meats do you eat?
Very rarely eat meat.
Okay.
Yeah. I think there's certain things, now ideally we'd wash that out, but it doesn't really matter for now. I think there's certain things in meat that people, if they stop eating meat, they can miss, but you can get them from other sources. For a classic one for people over about 30 is CoQ10. You can't really get enough from plant foods, but it's something you can supplement with.
What's it called again?
CoQ10, really, really important factor in nutrition after about the age of 30.
And how does that help?
It's needed by the mitochondria in the cells. Yeah. So people won't get enough from plant food. We don't really get enough from meat, but that's the only real nutritional source of it, unless you take it as a supplement. Yeah. So there's various things. Minerals, and this is an odd one because if the soil wasn't depleted, which we know it is, first of all, that it was deforested, then over-farmed, and the waste going out to sea and all this kind of thing. So the soil is in most places, and the places we're likely to get our food from, the soil's very depleted of minerals. And it's depleting very badly in, for example, iodine and zinc, and sulfur.
So the farmer's not supposed to add this to the soil?
It would be such a big project, wouldn't it? Imagine remineralising. It can be done with seaweed and so forth, but that's a massive project. That's organic farming. Even organic farms, the soil is generally depleted. To remineralise the soil is another level above organic and biodynamic.
It'd be very costly as well.
Yeah, it can be done. I know people are doing it, but that's not the normal thing. So we have, our plant food now has become mineral deficient. So, I make up for that by supplementing with minerals. But the interesting thing is why often, people get minerals from meat, because if you're a farmer and you keep animals and you don't supplement them with minerals because the soil is depleted, you wouldn't be able to afford the vet fees. See, we just go along to the doctor. Well, I don't personally, go along to the doctor, the NHS,
Yeah.
But the farmer, if the farmer the farmer hasn't got the NHS for his animals. So ironically, the animals are actually generally better mineralised than we are. So you would get that from the meat. So, I'm just saying, mechanistically, I'm not really bringing morals into this. That's why I said I don't go into the shoulds. I'm not really bringing morals into this, just saying how it is. But there are lots of good reasons not to eat meat beyond any ethical consideration, because one thing is our bodies aren't really designed to break down a lot of meat. Maybe insect material, but not slabs of meat, not slabs of flesh.
Oh dear.
Well, I'm not, I'm not saying what people should and shouldn't be eating. I'm just saying, how the human body is, and also it has hormonal effects as well. So you can affect the way you feel and the way you experience life.
So you're just adding.
So I've added banana, and I'm going to add. The exact quantities are in my recipe in my book.
Okay.
So I'm adding some strawberries, and I'm adding some.
Do you leave the stalks in?
I do. That's good food.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. You have strawberry leaf tea. Strawberry leaf is a herb. I'm adding some figs. I've already taken the butts off them.
Okay.
Save time. Figs are one of the best foods for humans.
Okay.
For lots of reasons. And what else? Is there anything else I've missed? Oh, chocolate powder.
That's probably why when we were young, everybody used to eat fig rolls. Do you remember? Fig rolls seem to be quite commonplace then. What's that?
You know what? It's maca. You know what? I've actually forgotten to get out the chocolate powder, which is the whole point. This is chocolate pudding, but it doesn't matter. This is heshewu, it's a herb, and here's some green hemp leaf. You know what? It's the strangest thing. Although this is chocolate pudding, it actually tastes really good without the chocolate. So, and it doesn't matter. So you can add chocolate powder to this as well, either raw cacao powder or cooked cocoa powder.
Okay.
And coconut. So I always forget something.
Would you eat this on a regular basis?
Yeah, I eat it most days.
Okay.
Yeah, it just really fills you up, and it's got so much essential nutrition in it. It's a nutritional foundation, and so on top of this, I'd probably have a salad, and some other various bits and pieces.
Is this going to make me look 10 years younger?
No, I don't.
Am I going to try this?
Unfortunately, I hope you like it without the cocoa powder in it.
That could be a problem. I like chocolate.
But it's a funny thing, this recipe, is when you forget to put the chocolate in, it sometimes just tastes like chocolate pudding. It's really nice with the strawberries in, actually. That really helps. I might have to give it a little bit of a stir, but actually it's all blended at the bottom. So, right, okay, I'll put it in the bowl. So this is chocolate pudding without the chocolate.
Why is it? Oh, right, okay.
Because I forgot to bring the cocoa powder out.
Let's have a try this.
So I don't know what it's going to taste like.
Okay.
And I could probably blend it a bit longer as well, but...
So this has been dehusked. The hemp has
been
rather.
dehusked, yeah.
Okay, cheers.
Still good. It's not quite the same as with the chocolate in, though. You like it?
Yeah, I do.
I mean, this is about as healthy as it gets.
I do. That is really nice. Could you give that to young children?
Yeah, any age. And you can put that in a freezer and you can serve it as ice cream.
Right. Yeah, I can tell the coconut's kicking in there.
Yeah. Yeah, it tastes very strongly the coconut, doesn't it?
It really is nice. Yes. It's one
So
of
this
those
is typical
things
me.
that
I'm all covered in food.
tastes
bit of
much
an
better
animal.
than what it looks.
Yeah.
I wonder if children would eat. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay. Right.
But it's not. It probably is a bit more appealing with the cocoa powder in it.
Yeah. I don't normally like coconut, but that is nice.
Oh really? I didn't know that.
Yes. The only time I have coconut is perhaps in an Indian meal.
Oh, you told me that.
Yeah.
And you said you didn't like Bounty bars, but to me, they've got so much sugar in them.
Well, it's they're actually proper pieces of coconut.
Yeah, it's
aren't they?
desiccated coconut.
Desiccated, and yeah, no.
Yeah, it's all dried up, and this is fresh. Freshly.
Yeah, it's really nice. So where do we go from here?
In terms of,
If you're eating this most days, and how long did it take you to have this as part of your diet for you to then start connecting? But are you basically?
No, I didn't do it like that. You see, what happened
Okay.
with me is the time I've discovered, was really getting into raw food was, it was a little bit after that. It sort of started to become a big craze at that time, and it was very much a focus on it being vegan. So it's a sterile raw plant food diet, and for me that didn't work. And I felt really, kind of really high within about 3 days.
What, living
Literally
on
high.
this?
No, I wasn't eating that. I was eating a mixture of. I didn't know anything about this. I was eating a mixture of sort of salad vegetables and seeds, and miso, and I did it slightly different then. And I felt high, within 3 days of just cutting out all cooked foods. But what was happening is I wasn't properly nourished, and I was having cravings, and I didn't know why. And it was much later that I realised that actually I was missing out really important nutrients, and the fat-soluble vitamins and B vitamins I was low on and so forth. So
Did you have to take vitamin supplements?
no, I changed. I mean, I take a lot of supplements now. I didn't used to take so many of them. But what I came to realise after a while is that for me, I would do better if I included some raw dairy produce, and that's not the way for everybody, but that was what worked for me. And I was just in that phase, so I was eating lots of salad and smoothies. I'm trying to remember what I was eating: salad and smoothies and all this kind of stuff.
Did you eat eggs at all?
No, I didn't eat any of that to start with, and I started including eggs a little bit at that stage.
Presumably those were cooked.
I think for a bit I did that, but you can have a raw egg yolk mixed into that.
Yeah.
That'd be fine. Yeah, as long as it's like from a well-sourced egg. But not raw egg white, because that can stop you absorbing nutrients. But yeah, you can definitely put raw egg yolk in that if that's something you'd like to do. But it was at that time I started realising that for me I needed to include some raw animal products in order to feel nourished.
Yeah.
And then it was just after that I came across the work of Tony Wright, and actually I learnt from him how to make this. This was his recipe for brain nutrition. So I learnt that off him. And then
should this make us more alert?
Well,
should it make us brighter?
yeah, I mean, of course, yeah.
Have there been any studies to show, like they say about fish oils are supposed to make you brainier?
Not enough work's been done on it. I mean, a lot of it is, subjective. It's people's reports, isn't it? So many people had the experience of eating more raw food and feeling so much better. I mean, it's just so much evidence from people's experience. In the book I do talk about some of the studies that have been done in relation to raw food. I mean, as into a study on people. Well, for example, there's a video, I've forgotten what, on healing people with diabetes with raw food. I've actually forgotten what it's called right now. There's that is a classic.
Because there's so many people now suffering from type 2 diabetes.
Yeah, well,
you can control it with your diet.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there are random studies. For me, I've met so many people and talked to so many people face to face that reading about it or hearing about it on the internet is almost like hearsay to me, because I know so many real people in the real world who've changed over to raw food and what they've got to say about it, firsthand.
Do you ever incorporate beetroot in any of your diets?
I have done, yeah. I don't right now, but you can do. Grated root vegetables, grated carrot, grated sweet potato, grated beetroot. Yeah, root vegetables are okay, yeah. I mean, the only thing, you know, there's certain foods you wouldn't want to eat raw, like normal potatoes or the cruciferous vegetables. You know, it's best to have them fermented.
As opposed to cooked.
Yeah, well, you can, you know, if you want to have a raw diet, you'd have them fermented.
Right, I was going to say, because potatoes can give you bad stomach, can't they, if they are raw?
Oh yeah, you wouldn't eat potatoes raw, no. But sweet potatoes be okay.
Yeah.
They're very different.
Okay, well, thank you so much for coming into the studios today. And let's look forward to the next episode.
Let's see what we'll talk about then.
Yes. Thank you, Holly.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. And goodbye to everybody watching at home. Goodbye.